Good evening. Hello. Welcome to everyone on the street watching. Um, I'm hosting this stream on the English View on Porto for the preview Saturday between Arouca and Porto. And joining me, delighted to welcome a journalist. We've had some fans, some podcasters, even a commentator, but this is our first journalist on the channel, and also our second opposition fan. Back in January, we had Dennis from the Red Sea podcast, but we've got a fan, an opposition fan, and a journalist. Welcome, Simao.
Welcome to you also. Matt, it's a pleasure to be here to talk about Arouca. We're not that many fans, so it's always a pleasure to have some space and the opportunity to talk about this club.
Of course. And when I heard you on Long Ball Football podcast, it seemed like a no-brainer to try and get you on. So let's get right into it. So let's start on the Porto end. Coming off the back of a 1-1 draw with Vitória Guimarães, which meant Porto are now 6 points off the top and second place. So when they drew with Sporting CP, it made me think Porto are out of the title race. But given that top two is now, given that they're about equal number of points off first and second, and I think second place is definitely achievable. First, the title's still somewhat on, and Sporting CP aren't the most convincing. To reiterate what I'd said in my shorts review in regarding to the game, first half was very boring. Definitely not enough was in the attack. Saw a better second half in terms of like chance creating, but also shaky in defense. So, and given that Arouca are a good underdog and they have pulled off some upsets against Porto before, that certainly is something that Porto do need to improve coming into this weekend. And last weekend, that they've had the first league win under Martin Salmi, which was a way to finance who Arouca did play a most recently, but we will not too long ago, but we will get onto that in a bit later. So this is certainly a game where Porto need to bounce back. We'll get more onto it that in come the preview, but whilst Porto aren't in the worst situation, they definitely have got more to do. So I'll turn to you now, Simao. What have you thought of Porto recently and this season overall?
Well, I've been watching the Porto game since the beginning of the season with Vitor Bruno as the main coach and also now with Martin Anselmi. I think that even though most of the Porto fans knew from the beginning that it was going to be a very difficult season because the club itself has very little money, a new management, the departure of several crucial players such as Pep and Francisco Conceição, I don't think that any Porto fan would have thought it was going to be as difficult as it is being. The way I see it, uh, taking in account the recent games and also the arrival of Martin Anselmi, and something that was also been seen with Vitor Bruno, I think is that both of them, especially Anselmi, want the team to play one way where they don't have players with characteristics to adapt to that idea. And we can see that every week. For example, the disaster that happened with Rio Ave, with those problems on the first build-up phase, led Martin Anselmi to look for one of the midfielders, either Eustáquio or Alan Varela or even Fabio Vieira, to move further back in order to help with the first phase of the build-up play. I think that, being honest, it's it's it is being a very difficult season for each one of the top three teams in the league, Porto, Benfica, and Sporting. And with in the Porto's very specific case, which I don't think it compares so much with the other clubs, because Benfica doesn't has the same kind of problems as Porto. Sporting only had the departure of Ruben Amorim, and if Amorim didn't went to Manchester United, I think that right now we wouldn't be talking about a Sporting with some problems in recent times. But with Porto, even though Martin Anselmi is beginning to show to be a promising manager, I don't think that until the end of the season we can sort of see Porto play good. I think that we might start to see, and I think that will be the normal, that we will see an evolution until the end, but not some of some sort of perfect game from Porto, which we can expect from it as it usually is. But there has been some problems that Porto might look to resolve with some positive results, starting with the match tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for that. I suppose there's not much more to say on Port Auto when also factoring in what's been discussed over the past few weeks as well. We'll also note that Porto are also out the Europa League, which we will see if that's a benefit or not come the end of the season based on how Porto will do. From that game, I can say, because I haven't gone live since Pinto da Costa had passed away. So to comment a little bit more on that, I'll say that first half not too bad. The second half faulty, not terrible, but as the Borges debate has also been coming into play, that he's got two assists lately, but in that game in particular, he had the worst attempt of the whole game, and even though he had an assist, what's also worth pointing out in regards to that certain miss was that it came right before Roma's 3-1, before he made it 3-1. But nonetheless, what it will mean is that Porto will have a week to prepare, whilst also not being in the other cup competitions as well. And we shall see how this much time of training is going to help, starting from about now. So, yeah, I think pretty much everything else in regards to Porto will most likely come into play when we look into the actual match itself. So I think we can go right nicely to Arouca, a team that lost earlier in the season to us by 4-0, and last season they managed to get a 3-2 win, and have managed to get some results against Porto in the past, and even did it. They've even got a draw at Sporting CP as well. Just get up Arouca's fixtures just to remind me of some of the other past games as well as that Sporting CP game that's come recently. I'll just look at the table as well. But still, so Arouca currently 12th in the table and are unbeaten in the last five games in the leagues. So yeah, Arouca currently maybe not. They haven't quite hit the heights that I was expecting. I mean, I wasn't necessarily expecting them to be high contenders into Europe, but I thought they could get higher mid-table here, and it hasn't really been in that for Arouca like it has in the past few seasons. So I'll come to you now. What have you thought of Arouca this season, and how do you reflect on your expectations and comparing Arouca's performance to now?
Well, as you said, the start of the season wasn't as good as expected because although the main objective of Arouca is still staying in Primeira Liga and avoid relegation as fast and as secure as possible, after 2 seasons where Arouca finished in 5th and 7th place, I think that everyone thought that we would be higher by now. Not saying, as you said, and I agree with you on that, not expecting Europe because it isn't as easy as it may look like. But the beginning of the season, bringing Gonzalo Garcia as manager, I think it was a little bit risky because of his little experience as a manager and no experience at all in Portuguese football, which is something that I think is very much needed in cases like Arouca, clubs with limited resources and very few, but dedicated, of course, personnel working in the club. And Coach Gonzalo had some problems in the beginning of the season. Arouca had lots of injuries. He had to some come up with something like a different defense each game, which was a very difficult period. And he also had good players that weren't showing their best form as they are now. And Gonzalo ended up being fired when he was starting to solidify his tactics, his ideas. You bring, for example, the Porto game. Even though Arouca lost 4-0 and the result speaks about for itself, I can recall and I remember that until the red card from Guban Yalcin, which was he had a risky tackle, ended up picking up a second yellow card. It's that kind of challenge that you having a yellow card cannot do. He did it and got punished for that. So that same game had some sort of two ways because on the first half, Arouca managed to still hold itself up to the nil-nil draw, but then on the second half less with less one player, the things got quite difficult. So um, s- uh, just want to say also that Vasco Seabra, as you may know, if you also um, watch the Portuguese football as a whole, he is famous for succeeding to other managers in clubs. But right now, he is much more than that because he managed to adapt his tactics to the context of Arouca, and the reflex of it is what we see right now because Arouca is, at this moment, a team playing good football and still invincible on this year with 8 games unbeaten, with Arouca managing to win or draw. I just want to emphasize the growth of players like Chicolamba, Fontan, Weberson, the three of them defenders, and also Pablo Gonçalves, which is a player that is being very good right now and didn't get that much playtime in the beginning of the season. And continuing this form, which is by far very different for good than the form Arouca showed in the first half of the season, I'd say that tomorrow and also until the end of the season, it will not be as easy as it may sound to stop Arouca, because I think that right now, with this form continuing, we have all the conditions to finish in the top half of the table.
Thanks for that. Before I get more into the players, I will mention the last two games Arouca had, where they managed to get a 2-2 draw away at Sporting CP, which is impressive. Then they played Farenense, who are battling at the opposite end of the table, and draw or 2-2. What's your reflection on the last two games, and also the fact that you got such an impressive result against Sporting CP, but then couldn't follow it up with a win against somebody right down at the bottom end of the table?
Well, the Sporting game, you know, it started with something that is unpredictable, which was their own goal by Sant Just with Rui Silva in the middle also. But then we saw a match that reflected, I'd say, perfectly the moment of both teams, because Sporting still had some problems, especially in defense and in the and its organization, and Roca tried its best to make to score the 2 goals and put themselves in advantage, which they managed to get even before halftime. And then on the second half, they tried to contain the power of Sporting, which was more than expected. Being uh, losing, Sporting wanted to change things up. They managed to get a point still with the 2-2 draw, but Arouca still, and also Sporting. I need to be honest on this, because both teams on the last minutes of the game had some, I'd say, incredible chances to pick a third goal and win. The Farense game was a little bit different, because Farense is, as you said, and you're more than correct, battling for relegation. They're battling every game, and Arouca, as the as Vasco Seabra also, the coach also admitted before the game, Arouca simply just didn't show up in the first half, because Arouca didn't make any shot on target or any shot at all. They just they just weren't in the game. And at halftime, Vasco Seabra had to change things. He certainly did it, because Roca ended up recovering from the result, changing it up from a 1-0 in favor of Farense to a 2-1 advantage for Arouca. Then Farense picked up the draw, but in the last minute, Arouca was very close to grab a 3-2 winner, but a very, very incredible uh, near the goal cut from Bermejo, I think, um, avoided that, because Arouca needed it. But, you know, to summarize things up on these 2 games, I think in general they are good performances for Arouca. except of course the first half against Farense.
Uh, very well then. Next question I'll ask, which we're transitioning within the match preview. Who are the players to look out for, especially as Porto fans or as neutrals? Who would you say is worth bringing up for Arouca?
Well, the first one I want to emphasize, and it's some sort of odd one, I'd say, because he isn't the goal scorer of Arouca, but I think that he is one of the most fundamental players for our play, which is David Simão, our captain, which is 34 years old, but still battling up every game with an incredible precision of pass. He is very, very important still in our game because the ball on the first build up of play or anywhere, the ball passes from him to any player he picks. Um, I'd say also Jason, which was in Arouca also last season, and it was him who scored the winner against Port last season with a very tasty dribble. I recall. Um, Although Jason is expected to remain on the bench because he has been there since the Boa Vista game, if I'm not mistaken, but I I very much expect him to enter the field and still as a starter or as a bench surprise. Let's put it this way. Um, I'd expect him be also to have a bigger part, a bigger role in the match, and also I'd say Chico Lamba, a centre back from the B side team of Sporting, which is evolving very well in Arouca, and he also managed to do one thing that not many centre backs can proudly say that because he made Gyökeres in the Sporting match against Arouca. He made Gyökeres some sort of vanished because he just didn't let him do anything he wanted. To finish off, I do also I'd also emphasize Morlai Sila, which is a midfielder that can he is some sort of an all-rounded player because he has a very nice shot from outside the box. He is a very good passer. He also thinks the game very well and can have a very, very nice help on the defense.
Um, Thanks for sharing those players. So up next, Arouca, they've got one of the smaller stadiums in the league, so we're not going to see. We might see a sellout, but we won't see like particularly high attendance numbers compared to some of the other clubs. And then also the pitch is something as well to consider. And I've seen this to great effect in England, not even just in the Premier League, but down in the lower leagues where the underdogs will use the pitch conditions as an advantage. And I've seen that in CONCACAF is another example of that as well. How much do you think the conditions of the pitch, the weather, whatever else may be, affect how influential? How much of an effect do you think this will become the Arouca vs Porto?
Well, I'd seen the prediction of the weather for tomorrow, and I think it will not be raining, so that is an advantage for both teams because our Our field, as you said, is uh, is old. It gets very muddy when it rains, and that becomes an advantage for Arouca because they are used to play on that field. But I think we will have some perfect climate conditions for the late evening tomorrow. Um, I'd say that the main subject that can affect on that area you mentioned will be the fans, and we can expect a sellout. Porto had to require more tickets than the ones that they had initially, and Porto will play in home. To be honest with you, because in every game of smaller teams like Arouca and others, we are
Financial's
also,
another fair example,
yeah, the
despite the
financially thing.
distance.
Because for example, a normal match of Arouca, the ticket price for a fan that is not a season ticket holder, for the public in general, let's say it this way, is 15 euros. And for this match, and also with Benfica and Sporting, Roca rises up the price to 25 slash 30 euros, because it's also in these matches where the tickets gets more money to the club, which is something that clubs like Arouca also need.
Uh, True. Getting onto the football side of things, what are you expecting from this game, and how do you think Aruka's going to be approaching the game at 6 p.m. on Saturday?
Well, as our coach Vasco Seabra said today, and I can agree with him, Arouca must expect an aggressive Porto, especially in the first half, looking to dominate early on and give a good response to recent poor results and displays. I think that Porto will stick on its formation and the same starting 11, only with the absence of Pepe because of his injury. But I don't think that Martin Anselmi will be keen on changing its philosophy of the game and also the formation, even though the fans require that due to the performance of the team. Arouca's defense, if Namazo does play tomorrow, which I think he will, I think that Arouca's defense will have more work to do, as Namazo often leaves the area to come and get the ball, which can lead to dragging out the marking and creating spaces in the behind of the defense. From Arouca, I think that everyone can expect a very solid team, especially in defense. The midfield, if it has the freedom to do so, will have a very nice build-up play. Um, I'd say to watch out for the wings, especially Porto left, respectfully, Arouca's right, where Treze's speed is hard to stop. Alfonso Treza is a little magician, a little Uruguayan magician who is very fast, very, very fast.
Sounds like
And
a counterpart to Alfonso Davies, who plays on the left side.
so some sort of that, something like that. And in the center of the attack, Roca also has two men, Enrique as a target man, and Pablo Gonçalves as a number 10. But the same thing that I said about the Namazo situation to the Arouca's defense may end up happening also to Porto's defense, even though Porto's defense will have three in the center and not two as Arouca. So to summarize things up, I think we will be having a nice football match where I expect from the recent results, the recent form, and some sort of unusual but expected Arouca's dominance in most of the game, but we cannot, of course, uh, not expect a nice display of Porto because, for example, in the last match with Vitória, Porto had a, in my opinion, of course, I think that Porto showed up a better side than it happened in the past, with picking up the draw, with Vitória picking up the draw only in the last minutes of the match on an unfortunate sequence. But you know, I think that will be a nice match, to be honest.
Well, certainly mentally, that's going to be a strong factor on both sides because Arouca will need to be mentally strong to give them the best chance of winning, and Porto will definitely needs to be on it to avoid situations like the goal that they conceded against Victoria Guimaraes. um, and of course, what will also be interesting is that Martin Amsalmi, being pretty new to the league, I'm not 100% sure what his expectations will be, like kind of on how Arouca approach. Obviously, he'll have some experienced advisors, but certainly compared to if somebody like Sergio Conceição was approaching. Um, but yeah, given the situation of the league, currently 6 points behind both Sporting CP and Benfica and Sporting Braga are in that same position as Porto, albeit behind on goal difference. I think we're sort of going to see something similar to the Farenense game, not so much from a performance and completely a grind out, but certainly targeting the win is going to come quite a bit of a gap before or how you win. Um,
I'd say
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but you bring on a very crucial topic, which is the mentality. I think
yeah,
that tomorrow, from both teams, as you said, more than the tactics or what each player and the team as a whole can show in terms of its quality of the game, I'd say that the mental part will be the most crucial one tomorrow, because if which team shows up as a whole more connected with each other and with the capacity of not letting any player who makes any mistake throw the towel on the floor, picks him up and tells him, it didn't work now, it will work on the match as we go further. I think that the mental part will be the most crucial one to both teams. And Arouca is being right now mentally strong. Porto not as much, because we saw recently, for example, that match in Barcelos with Gil Vicente, where we saw that the mental part was lacking, and I think it still is lacking a little, but it will be the most important topic, I think.
indeed. And something you did talk about earlier was Danny's presence up front. Now, even if he isn't as clinical as Samu or Meridian, what he can bring is he's would be less predictable than someone like Samu, given that off the ball he'll you know more what to expect from him in terms of how to defend against him. And I think defenders have figured that out, even though his hold-up play has been pretty good in the last few games. So there's that to consider. Is there anything else you think that would be worth raising before we get into the predicted lineups?
I'd say the wings for both teams because Arouca's and we will talk about that further on. But for example, Arouca's right back Tiago Gaio will most likely not be available for the match. He is still in doubt because of an injury picked up. But I'd say that in both wings for Porto and Arouca, which team can has the quickest and the most clinical in dribble and also in the other aspects, passing and so on. I'd say that will be a crucial part of the pitch, the wings, because it's where both teams are having or um, are more I'd say vulnerable to have some kind of problems because for example in Porto João Mário, which I think he will play, um, his strongest subject isn't the defense. He is more of an attacking wingback than a defensive one. And Francisco Moura, for example, is also being a little inconsistent. And on Arouca's, Weverson, the left back, is also he is rising and he is showing up better in game attributes. He is better in confidence also, but he is still lacking some aspects. And Tiago Gai, for example, or Alex Pinto, which will be his direct substitute, still are lacking. I think, if I'm not mistaken, both of them lack a little bit on pace, and that can be a major factor tomorrow too.
We've got a comment here. Hello, Richard. Hello, obrigado for being here. Is this somebody you know, or?
Yeah, it is a friend of mine.
Thank you for joining. Have you got anything else to say regarding to Richard, or not really?
Yeah, he, to be honest with you, and it's some sort of a funny thing. He isn't from Arouca. I met him in college, and
Oh, interesting.
he actually is a Benfica fan. So he's some sort of infiltrate here, some sort of secret agent spying on both teams to see what can they as they being Benfica do further up in the season, which where Arouca and Porto still will play against them.
Yeah, to be fair, why not? Seeing as Benfica aren't playing in the league this weekend. But let's go on to lineups, and being the home team, I'll let you start off with what you think the Arouca team is, and I'll allow you to also say what changes you would prefer. But start with, what is your predicted team?
Well, I'd say that Arouca will play in its usual 4-2-3-1 formation with the comeback of Nico Mantel in goal. He was suspended last game. And to be honest, even though Nico Mantel is a great goalkeeper between the sticks, I think that it should play João Valido, which is its substitute, because Valido also, not only Valido is also good between the posts, he is also good outside of them. And with, disputing a through ball or in the first phase of build up play, Nico Mantel isn't as great on that, but he is also a good goalkeeper. At right back, Alex Pinto, as I said, due to Thiago Gaio's injury, because he still remains in doubt, I think that Alex Pinto will be the starter. At the centre backs, the two of usually it's Chicolamba and Fontan. To finish off the defense, Weberson at left back. In the midfield, both pivot, a double pivot of our captain David Simão and also Taishi Fukui, which is a very nice midfielder from Japan, which Arouca managed to buy to Bayern Munich, an unexpected deal in January. Treza will be the right wing, Sila the left one, Pablo Gonçalves as a number 10 between and up front we will have Henrique Araújo. I'd say that the changes I would make would be the goalkeeper, even though I can understand the use of Nico Mantel because he is a good shot stopper. But I'd say, for example, at striker tomorrow, to get in behind the Porto's defense, Dylan Nandin, which is a Uruguayan striker we got on loan in January, and which he is very fast. I'd say that he may end up being a starter tomorrow rather than Enrique, and I'd prefer it that way because Nandin can explore more of the defense fragility that Arouca may cause to Porto.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I'll predict the Porto lineup. I'm aware of 3 injuries, not 100% sure on the suspensions though, but Diogo Costa, of course, starting goal. If eligible to play, I'll expect the main centre backs Diallo, Perez, and Otavio to play. If one of them's unavailable, we might see Thomas Perez, midfielder who played in that center of defense against Vitória Guimarães to play. Then on the right side, I think João Mario will return, like you said, and João Mario is being displayed on the Porto branding previews of this game, so that does suggest that he's going to at least have some kind of involvement. If available, I think Alan Varela will play and Stachio, Francisco Mora as well. And now the attack then gets complicated because I think Gonzalo Borges is a terrible player, but the statistics are making him look better than what he has been recently. So even if the assist was easy last time and he showed up too late against Roma, it's still an argument. And then you've got Vieira, who was subbed on, who scored the goal, and there's Rodrigo Moro as well. And we haven't even got to the striker yet. So it is a complicated one. And Rodrigo Mora's perhaps the most consistent one of them all. It would be risky to potentially put Fabio Vieira in midfield to accommodate the other two attackers. I do think Danny Namaso Loda will be starting at the striker position. He did have the best involvement up front and did get was unlucky with not he himself unlucky, but he was he himself was unlucky, although and there was offside in the build-up, so there was some like positive signs, and he had an impact in the Roma own goal, and as well as scoring in a big moment against Sporting CP. So I think that and Samu not offering enough will get him a starting place. And so it's really about who's going to be in that attacking areas. I suppose I might be a bit bold with this and say if you're going off the recent games, I have a feeling he'll probably go with Vieira and Borges, and Mora goes to the bench. But it's close. It's difficult, and there's an argument that you could fit them all in and drop one of the defensive midfielders, but I don't think that's the best option. And I think Anselmi will likely be aware of that as well. So Costa, Diallo, Nohan Perez, Otavio, the midfield four, Jean-Mario Alan Ferreira, Stephen Estaquio, Francisco Mora, and then Fabio Vieira and Gonzalo Borges behind Danny Namaso Loda. Any objections with that lineup in terms of what you think would happen?
I mean, I've come up for the I've come up for the article that I posted today on the journal I work on. I've come up with the same starting 11 from last match, but even that doesn't fully convince me, because that Rodrigo Mora's surprise, I'd say, of him suddenly going to the bench isn't as bold as most people would think. The striker thing, I'd say it's the most difficult one, because Porto right now has 3 strikers, and none of them seem to really step up to the place. Namazu is good in the build-up, but is lacking a little bit of the clinical finishing. He is also it's also needed for the team, of course. Samu is just being in a very bad. The moral topic we bring on before, it reflects, for example, on Samu, because right now Samu seems that mentally it affects him so much that he cannot do anything correct. I'd say, for example, one pretty example of that is a Trivela pass he tries to make on the last match, and the ball, instead of doing the expected curve, just goes up front, doesn't do any curve at all. I'd say that Samu is mentally. I didn't want to say this kind of strong word, but I'd say that Samu is like mentally destroyed, because it seems that he cannot do anything and be positive on anything. And there's also Danny's goal where he just some sort of is disappeared. I don't know if anyone in Porto has seen him over the last couple of weeks, but it just seems to be disappeared. He seems to be gone. Nobody has ever seen him in the past weeks.
Yeah, he's had some like substitute goals, but having not stepped up to the mark against Santa Clara, that's been a very influential part of where he is in the pecking order and why he is the later of the two strikers to be subbed on when he does get subbed on. But I'd also like to mention that last week, on Monday, Ivan Marcano was back on the substitute bench. I'm not expecting an involvement um, in regards to on the pitch, but still there's progression in his potential of potentially playing again sometime soon, and I certainly think we'll see him on the bench again. I believe now is the time to go to score predictions, and I'm very split on this. But regardless, I'm still going to go to you first. What do you think the score prediction will be?
I'd say that given the recent form of both teams and the quality of their play, I'd expect Arouca to win, but not, for example, grabbing a clean sheet. Also, I'd guess a 2-1 win to Arouca, but a not very comfortable 2-1 win. I'd say that it will be a 2-1 win to Arouca, but the discussion of the result will be still deciding in the last minutes of the game.
Yeah, I was thinking likely a 1-1, 2-1 Porto, possibly 2-1 Arouca. And as I was thinking, with was Porto have potential, we're not seeing enough viability from them to prove that we can be sure of their win. I'm close to giving them the benefit of the doubt, and I think I will go beyond the one goal mark. But my thinking is it'll be 2-1 for a large part of the game, and I think Aruka's going to find another goal in stoppage time. So even though for a while I didn't have this score on mind during the stream, I think I'm going to change it to a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be one of them where Porto might be slightly better. The scoreline may not reflect the actual game itself in terms of goal quantity and the number of clear-cut chances. But I think we're going to see a bit better from Porto, but not quite enough. Whether the goal could come from a set piece or something. But even though 1-1, 2-1 Porto were largely what I had in my head coming into this segment, I think we're going to see a 2-2 draw. So yes, I believe that is all we have in regards to the game. I will also add to Porto's title chances earlier, and I think Benfica is, as of now, catching Benfica is achievable, given that they do have some. They have a harder set of fixtures later in the season compared to what they've had recently. They've still got to play Vitória Guimarães away, Rio Ave, Braga, Porto. I was expecting them to get a win against Santa Clara because they've got a friendly relationship there, but still, but I think there's not a lot else to touch upon there. Hopefully, we'll see a good game, or if not, then at least a positive outcome to a not so interesting game. But Zamal, thanks for coming on. I'm sure we'll hear more from you on the Long Ball Football podcast sometime soon. But where can the viewers find you? You'll find you in terms of your online presence and also your work, and where can they find you?
Well, before all that, I just want to thank you again for the invitation. It was a pleasure, and it is always a pleasure for me to talk about Arouca. And to you and everyone watching, I I just want to thank you all for listening, and I invite you not only to watch the game tomorrow, which I'm sure it will be a good game of football, but I also want to invite you all to visit Arouca when you get the chance, because we're a small town but very beautiful and welcoming. And feel free to send me a message on any subject, and when you visit Arouca, just let me know. I'll be delighted to welcome you all. Regarding on social presence and about my work, I'm um, I'm more involved in a local newspaper called Discurso Direto, which translates to something like direct speech. Um, and also on the website of Mais Futebol, where I am their correspondent for the home games of Arouca. So on the local newspaper, Discurso Direto, where I'm always, I'll in Mais Futebol on the Arouca's home matches, and also on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'll leave in the comments my user tags so that everyone can freely talk to me, because it will be a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. His Twitter is in the description. So, but also, if you are to put your links as you were referring to in the live chat, what I will say to that is the YouTube live chat does tend to take a bit of time before it does show on the replay. So if you haven't thought about doing this as well, then also in the comments below would be welcome. And I know a lot of the viewer base will likely see this preview on the replay. But yeah, do go and follow him on all the socials. Check out his work. And I've put Arouca into Google Maps, so at the very least that's on my search history. And who knows what what my future is in regards to visiting there. I'm sure I may do it at some point. Just under an hour away from Porto. But yes, it's great to have you on. Who knows? We may see you again around here. Thanks for your contributions, and yeah, I hope you have a good weekend and enjoy the game. Thanks to everyone who's watched both live and the replay, and as well as contributed your thoughts. All interaction from liking, subscribing, and sharing is very much appreciated. Goes a long way, and I'll definitely do some sort of review on the game. And then in regards to other upcoming videos, nothing specific has been laid out before the next game, but we'll certainly next week. That being Braga away, which, to be fair, I might, given where Braga are, I might end up doing another stream like this. But and of course, I'll get in contact with people in regards to arranging the Benfica stream, and as well as maybe get some bonus content out there. But thanks to everyone watching, interacting, and Simal, of course, himself. Enjoy the game, and take care. And in the meantime, Forza Porto.